Oh man, Augmentation Evokers just can't catch a break, can they? Blizzard has decided to put out a last-minute balance patch to be applied right before Season 3 kicks off, and they have decided to roll out another nerf to Augmentation. But that's not all. We also have got some buffs and nerfs to some other specs as well. So is this the end of Augmentation? Should we reroll now, or is this just not as bad as it may seem? Don't worry, because we'll go over all of that in this video. But before we jump into things, do me a favor and smash that like button and subscribe to the channel as well. So Kyvex, the community manager, put out this post on the forums, and it reads, "As a result of recent testing and analysis of class performance, now that Guardians of the Dream patch is live, we're going to be making a few adjustments to over and underperforming specs just before the beginning of Dragonflight Season 3 on Wednesday. Please note that the changes to tier sets are listed below for reference, and their differentials are in comparison to the last build of the public PTR. Again, we'd like to thank everyone who tested classes on the Guardians of the Dream PTR. Your feedback was very helpful. For our first spec, we've got Unholy Death Knights. So we've got Death Coil damage increased by 10%, Scourge Strike / Clawing Shadows damage increased by 10%, Ghoul damage increased by 8%, Virulent Plague damage increased by 20%, and Apocalypse Ghoul damage increased by 5%. So when you look at the buffs for all of these abilities and you just kind of put them all together, for Unholy Death Knights, it's looking like you guys are going to be getting about a 3 to 4% DPS gain overall. And then on to Vengeance Demon Hunter. So with Vengeance, it looks like we've got two nerfs here. The first one is for our tier set bonus to Sigil of Flame damage. Basically, the Sigil of Flame damage granted is being reduced by 20%, and then Illuminated Sigils now increases parry chance against affected targets by 15%, down from 20%, so 5% nerf there. And overall, these two targeted nerfs are not going to be that big of a deal for Vengeance Demon Hunters, because the talent that's associated with Illuminated Sigils was pretty much already overtuned, so this nerf is going to kind of bring it back a little bit, so it's not that big of a deal. And then the 4-piece flare-up damage being reduced by 20%, again, is not significant, because the value of the 4-piece is actually from the soul fragments that we generate, not the actual raw damage. So Vengeance players, you guys are good to go. And now we move on to Druids. So for Guardian Druids, Mangled damage now is going to grant 12 rage from 10, and your cat form energy regeneration is being increased by 50% from 35%. For Balance, again, cat form energy regeneration increased by 50%. Restoration, rip damage increased by 140%, and this will not apply in PvP. Rake damage increased by 60%, shred damage increased by 140%, ferocious bite damage increased by 200%, does not apply in PvP combat, and again, cat form energy regeneration increased by 50%. So for Guardian Druids, Mangle now granting 12 rage from 10 is going to help a little bit with your rage generation, so that'll be nice. As far as the cat form energy regeneration being increased across all the different specs, I feel like that's more of like a quality of life improvement. And then for Restoration, all of your cat abilities getting these huge buffs to your damage is going to be really nice. I feel like this is probably going to increase the pick rate of Restoration Druids in high keys for Mythic Plus, but we'll just have to wait and see. Alright, on to the one that everyone's curious about. So Augmentation Evokers. They put a developer note here. They said that the amount of utility that Augmentation Evokers bring on top of its high damage has proven to be too powerful despite recent changes. Therefore, we are further reducing their damage contributions to the group in order to balance them against other specializations. Ebonmite grants 6.5 of the Evoker's primary stat from 8%. Close as Clutchmates increases the effectiveness of Ebonmite and the Breath of Eons by 10%. From 20%, and the amount of versatility granting by Shifting Sands has been reduced by 15%. So everyone's probably wondering, how bad are these nerfs? So the theory crafters over on the Augmentation Evoker Discord are saying basically this is going to be roughly an 8 to 9% overall reduction to your throughput, because Ebonmite and Shifting Sands represented about roughly 30 and 20% of your damage in raids. And then the nerf to your closest Clutchmates, that's going to be giving you about a 10 to 11% nerf in Mythic Plus. And before you guys start re-rolling, I want to say that this is probably not going to be that big of a deal. Augmentation Evokers were already looking really strong going into this season. I think what this might do is, if your guild is running 3 or more Augmentation Evokers, you're probably only going to see maybe like 1 or 2 instead. But at the end of the day, if you are someone that enjoys playing Augmentation Evoker, just keep playing it, you'll be fine. Moving on to Frost Mage. So your 2-piece for your tier set is going to increase your Glacial Spike damage by 16%. up from 10, and then a slight nerf to the 2-piece again, so the damage of explosion now deals 15% of the damage dealt by Glacial Spike from 20%. So this is roughly going to be getting you about a 2% increase to your single target damage and a 1% gain to your cleave. The only downside to this is that it's looking like your freeze damage is going to be losing about a 2% damage loss. Okay, moving on to Brewmaster. So for your 2-piece, the Breath of Fire's bonus damage is being increased to 40% from 20%, and then for the 4-piece, the bonus damage to targets afflicted by Breath of Fire increases to 15% from 10%. So with these two buffs alone, it's looking like Brewmaster's damage is going to be getting about a 3% increase, give or take, as well as your healing. For Windwalker, the tier set Blackout Reinforcement granted by melee abilities now occurs 66% more often and increases the Blackout damage by 200% from 150. So as far as how good this is going to be for Windwalkers, it's really not going to make that big of a difference. Moving on to Ret Paladins. So Ret's just getting a flat 3% gain to their damage across all of their abilities. I tried to get some insight into, how big of a buff this is going to be for Ret Paladins, but the class Discord over there, man, Ret Paladins are not happy. It almost seems like they're treating this buff as a slap in the face. I know that's kind of dramatic, but I don't know what to say. I guess Ret Paladins, welcome to what hunters have been dealing with for the past how many years. Anyways, moving on to Discipline Priests. And we've got a developer's note here. So they say, Discipline healing throughput, particularly in raids, is slightly higher than what we would like, given that their damage and utility contributions to the group. To balance them, we're reducing some talents that are giving a lot of power for only one talent point. The goal is to improve talent balance while also bringing them in line with other healers. So the changes here is that Divine Aegis absorption reduced by 5% of the healing done from 10%, and Inescapable Torment damage reduced by approximately 19%. So from what I've seen, Discipline Priests were already looking really good, and with these changes to their talents, I feel like they're going to be just fine. So if you're someone that was looking to main a Discipline Priest this season, you do you fam, you're going to be a-okay. So for rogues, we've got a quick one here. For Assassination, the 4-piece single target damage is just being increased by 4%, so that's going to be really nice. Okay, let's look at Destruction Warlocks. So the tier set, Flame Rift damage is being increased by 50%. This by itself is going to be giving Destruction just a flat 2.4% gain overall. And then you also have Unstable Tear damage increased by 5%, Shadowy Tear damage increased by 5%, and then Chaos Tear damage increased by 30%. And then for Demo Warlocks, we've got the tier set Doombrand single target damage increased by 50%, and then the Doom Fiend single target damage being increased by 40%. The 2-piece set bonus is now going to be reducing the cooldown of Grimoire Felguard by 0.5 seconds from 1 second, and the developer's note here says that we're reducing the power of Demonology's previous set bonuses to bring it in line with other set bonuses from Aberrus. Additionally, we're increasing the throughput of both Destruction and Demonology set bonuses from Amidrisil, while also increasing the power of Dimensional Rift baseline. And that's going to cover it for today's video. What do you guys think about these last minute changes before Season 3 goes out? Do you guys think this is enough nerfs to Augmentation Invokers, or do you think there needs to be even more? Either way, sound off in the comments section and let me know what you guys are thinking. Thanks again for watching this video. I'm still Solo, and I'll see you guys in the next one.